Hey, Flowmies, it's time for another edition of the ITF Flowcast. So this week we have Michael Draper. He's the owner of ExpertSafetyServices.com. He specializes in safety training and consulting for window cleaning, pressure washing, soft washing businesses. He's an excellent source of knowledge for safety. And we've actually interviewed him before. If you didn't hear his interview in season one, you're going to want to go back and listen to it. Feba Vandermeer interviews him, does a great job. He talks all about his coming up in the industry, just his entrepreneurial spirit and mindset, the different choices that he made. I mean, he's one of those guys that has done a little bit of everything, and he's got a great story coming up. So I really recommend you go back and listen to it if you haven't, or if you did hear it, refresh yourself again, because he's got some good stuff in there. But we wanted him to come back to talk about what he knows, and he is the expert in safety. And so we're going to address a lot of different questions that people have, especially business owners, small business owners, for instance. What are some of the most common injuries that window cleaners sustain in their work? Also, what should window cleaners keep in mind when they get on the roof, right? That's always kind of a controversial subject, just because, we're dealing with small houses. Do we really got to get all the equipment to get up there? We're going to talk a little bit about that. Also, we're talking about safety with water-fed pole use. That is definitely one that is, as water-fed poles become more common, the dangers increase. So we'll talk about that. We're also going to talk about how he responds to common statements that we hear within our industry, such as, I'm a single owner operator. Why do I care about following OSHA? It's not under me. I don't have to follow the regulations. Also, it's OSHA's too restrictive. Sometimes, window cleaner will feel that if they follow everything, they're going to lose money because of it. Also, the mindset of a window cleaner will do what it takes to get it done no matter what. Why that can be a dangerous viewpoint. So we're going to go ahead and get into this interview. Really enjoyable. Hope you enjoy it as much as I did speaking to him. So without further ado, let's listen to the interview. Hey, Flowmies, it's time for another ITF Flowcast. And this time we have Michael Draper of Expert Safety Services. Thanks so much for joining us, Mr. Mike. How you doing?
Hey, good, Gabe. Thanks for having me. Appreciate
Awesome.
it.
Hey, you have the distinction of being the first return guest on the Flowcast. So we appreciate you. We appreciate you coming back on for us. The first time we got to talk all about your, how you started as an entrepreneur and everything that you've done, how you've come up, the lessons that you learned. It's one of my favorite podcasts. I listened to it a few times. So I appreciate doing it. But this time we want to just pick your brain on the safety aspect, because as the founder of Expert Safety Services, your passion and your mission is to help window cleaners to be safe. So maybe you can talk a little bit of how it evolved to that, because before it was windowcleanersafety.com, correct? That's what your business was?
So we started off with windowcleanersafety.com and pressurewashersafety.com, and honestly, business-wise, I wasn't really sure where we wanted to go. After we got going and it started to develop a little bit, actually, I was talking with Brandon Vaughn, and we were on, just talking like this on a Zoom, and he said to me, he says, "Man, I'm looking at your website," and he says, "What are you?" And we just gotten to where we'd gotten busy really fast, and we were just kind of throwing stuff up there. We really weren't doing anything as a brand.
Yeah.
And so I started taking a really hard look at it and saying, yeah, that's true. And so while window cleaners, that's obviously my background, and pressure washing, that's our primary niche and target where we're at, but we do things with other mobile service contractors is where we try to stay. Sure. But when just looking at that, I was like, yeah, we're a safety consultant company, but we target, window cleaners or pressure washers or whatever. And so we decided that a different name was in order, and that's where Expert Safety Services came from.
Nice. Very cool. Well, maybe you could share with the Flowmies a little bit of some of the services you offer. We use you guys. We love it, especially because we have, a crew. We have 6 techs right now, and you just make it really easy for someone like myself, who is not always the best organized guy when it comes to training, to make sure that the crews are safe. So tell us a little bit about some of the services that you offer.
Yeah. So, we deal a lot with, and this is where maybe, the in the flow group or whatever, we don't expose ourselves to, because we deal a lot with larger contractors. And so larger contractors will hire me, Expert Safety Services, and they'll hire us to kind of oversee their entire safety program. So that can be everything from the safety advocate program that you were discussing, and I'll talk about that in a minute, to site visits, to putting together their safety plan, to unannounced spot checks on jobs, all of those types of things. So we do quite a bit of that. We've got several companies under management that we do, but everybody can't afford that. You have to have some size of company to be able to, afford a service like that, but we do it. The other thing that we do service-wise is we're involved with the anchors, specifically for high-rise window cleaning companies, the anchor testing on top of buildings. And so, but again, as it kind of comes down, that's not the only contractor out there, although we stay very busy with that. Contractors like yourself that have maybe 2 to 10, maybe even 15 employees, they're not at a scale yet where they can bring in a safety consultant like myself. So we developed what we call the Safety Advocate Program. And what that is it's an online program that basically is a dashboard for the employer that allows the employees, or the employer rather, to assign trainings, assign weekly safety meetings, assign pre-work inspections, safety manuals, all different kinds of stuff to the employee's app. And then as the employee does those things and responds through the app, it records back into the dashboard. And so the Safety Advocate Program is wildly popular. I think we have over 200 and some companies now on the Advocate Program.
Nice.
Besides our consulting type work that we do. So those are the services. So we really like to say everything from the engineered component on the building to the equipment that you might utilize, to the training that the guy needs to do the work they're doing. And then if a person wants to go further than that, we can provide consulting services, but beyond that. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah. And it's super affordable for someone like me, and like whenever we have downtime, it's awesome because, let's go to our apps. Everyone get out, we watch the videos, and then we can get, we can make use of the downtime instead of where, well, what are we going to do? Try to get some busy work for them, or worse, they don't work,
Yeah. We have two different levels now that guys can come in at. I was a window cleaner, so I know, we started in a few other podcasts, very humble beginnings, and I understand window cleaners budget. So we, a company like yours is paying probably $59 a month. And it's unlimited, right? So there's never any other charges in that. It's just the $59. And then we have what's called a managed program, where you might look at it and you say, you know what, I just don't have time to assign the meetings. I just don't have time to do these other things. I want to do it, but I want somebody to do it for me. And so that's where we offer a managed program as well. I think that runs $129 a month. So still not astronomical, but there's 2 levels that a person can come in and play.
Excellent. Very cool. Well, I love it. And then the cool thing too is we can, once they finish the course, we can print out their certificate. So they get their own little certificate that they can display, they can keep on file for themselves. We can keep on file as well when we're, when I apply for workers' comp, I always let them know, hey, well, this is the training, that we've done. And it's just kind of a nice, handy program. So appreciate all the hard work that
you were one that had a great success with it, right, Gabe? Because you were actually able to save.
It was like 25%.
25% on a work comp or GL,
workers
or what
comp.
Was it? Off work comp.
Yep.
That's huge.
It was huge. I don't remember exactly what the amount it was, but that was the discount that we got. It was huge because I'm fairly new to having employees. It's been about 4 or 5 years. So, when you start out, you're paying like the most amount for workers' comp. It's like, even if you had just 2, you're paying as if you had 15 employees. So when I finally reached whatever the year was that now I could start actually shopping around, I'm looking for, and it made me a lot more attractive to some of the other companies that wouldn't have ever looked at me before, because we had a training system in place. People were certified. And then I had the little booklet that you made up for me too. I presented that to our broker, And I mean, they were really happy about that because it makes their job easier as they're shopping us around, that we're actually a company that has everything together and is organized, even though I personally am not,
Yeah.
when it comes to that.
We don't talk about it a lot, but in our managed program, one of the things the app will do is from a risk management standpoint, we've heard this success story, not just from you, but from some of our larger companies as well, that they're able to get actually discounts or even refunds on their work comp because of some things that we can prove. But the app will actually assign a risk factor to each employee. And some employers might, that's scary, I don't want to know, but we are able to basically tell who's your problem person in the system. And so risk management's definitely an area we play in and discuss a lot and strategize with companies with.
Awesome. Very cool. I didn't think about that. You're right. You want to know who's the guys who are not taking it serious, right?
Yeah. And in a larger company, we've got one company that has, 50 some employees. I can tell them generally by quarter who is the potential accident.
Wow.
And so that's a powerful piece in that advocate program.
Well, you're like safety inception, huh? You're already predicting. You're predicting who's going to fall off the ladder.
Well, look, we know that safety is all based on behaviors. And so we know that if a person's not willing to watch a weekly safety meeting, if they're not willing to take training, if they're not willing to do what the employer's asking, they're the risk, right? Yep. Because that behavior or thinking is transferring into other things.
Yep. Absolutely. Oh, it's good stuff, man. Well, thank you so much. So we have a few questions that we wanted to ask. I'm not sure if we'll be able to get through all of them, but we'll do our best. Go ahead. And these are just, some of them are going to be pretty obvious to those who have either taken your course or have, are familiarized themselves with safety issues. But, there's a lot who don't, and a lot who are kind of in the camp of, well, I probably should do that someday, but they don't, because they don't have time, because whatever, life happens. So I thought we could talk about them, and you can just kind of bring attention to some of the potential issues and perhaps maybe help someone avoid injury, that maybe they're doing something that might be unsafe, and they can stop doing that. So number one is, what are the most common injuries window cleaners sustain, and what can we do to avoid those injuries?
Well, by far the most common, we hear about the big stuff, right? We hear about the lift accidents, or we hear about the water-fed electrocution, or we hear about, a high-rise accident. But by far, the ladder is the most dangerous tool that a window cleaner carries. Yeah. And, some of those things go reported, some of them go unreported, but we see enough even on social media and things like that to know that it's prevalent. And so, the thing is that I always just say, again, safety is a mentality. It's not, nobody leaves their house in the morning and says, what, I think I'll fall off my ladder. I think I'll disable myself. And so, you hear a lot of this, this talk of, well, I'm a professional. I know what to do. Everybody was a professional when they left the house this morning. Yep. Nobody left thinking, I'm an idiot, so I think I'll climb the ladder. Or, I don't know what I'm doing, so I think I'll climb a ladder today. Nobody leaves with that mentality. So everybody thinks they're a pro until it happens. And so, one of the biggest things in our industry, especially for window cleaners, is we have busy season. And in busy season, we're just flying, right? We're just going, go. And that mentality is where we really should take a step. We're trying to get it all done because it's season, and we know that, slow season is coming. So we're really trying to just push. Yeah. And that's really where probably most mistakes happen. Yeah. It's not that you don't know how to set a ladder. We're never saying that with safety. It's not that you're an unprofessional person. But it's the fact that we get our minds going in so many different directions that we'll forget about simple things. And that's when an accident happens.
And I think especially if we're owner operators, we've got more than just window cleaning on our mind. We're usually thinking about some other business decision we have to make, or maybe a customer was upset that you're going to have to deal with after this job, or you're going to, and your mind is going on 100 other things that you could see, where if you're in doing something out of routine, and you could easily miss something that you should have caught, and that could cause soft ground, or you put on a brick that's not secure, or whatever. There's a number of different things that you may not catch, and that could be the day that you have the fall.
Yeah, and we all think we're invincible. We all are so used to our work, and I'm I'm that way myself. I mean, we're all that way. We're all just built this way that we think nothing's going to happen to us. And unfortunately, I know guys that have been in the business a long, long time, experts in the business, and they've had accidents. And so that it doesn't translate. That mentality doesn't translate to the statistics that we see. And so we just have to be careful. I say in the class, oftentimes I'll have everybody raise their hand. Who's the newest in the business? And they'll raise their hand. I'll say, leave your hand up. And then who's been in the business, 20 years, 30 years, whatever, raise their hand up, leave it up. And I'll say, you two are statistically the most dangerous people in the room. And one of you know too much. You know everything. You've been in the business so long, you're an expert, and you can't tell you nothing.
Right.
And the other person doesn't know enough. And if you look at the accident rate, that's generally where things fall as well.
Wow, that's really interesting. Very good. And, I think too, it's not just the tall ladders either, step ladders. I remember this years ago, and, and I was younger. Now, if this would have happened, I probably would be in bed for a week. But I didn't know safety training or anything. I just, it's a step ladder. I mean, what else, what is there to know about a step ladder? And I remember it was just a little slope, and it was dirt, and I had it kind of as what I thought would have been safe. And of course the angle was too steep, and it just fell sideways, and I fell this way. And thankfully it was soft ground. But man, my hip, my side, my leg, it all hurt for a week. And it was just a dumb thing. I could have pulled it, and it was just one of those things where you're like you said, you're in the mode. I was using the step ladder for all of these in a row, and rather than going back to my truck and getting a pole for this particular window, I just tried to make it work. Yeah. And that really taught me a lesson of just because it hurt, like you said, you think you're invincible. I still think, I'm a teenager where you fall on the ground, you just get back up and, oh, that was funny. Ha ha ha. And then when you're sore the whole rest of the week and you're like, man, this really, put a cramp in my whole schedule this week. You start to realize that, oh, you've got to put a little more thought into that type of thing, so I'm just glad it was that and not something more serious that kind of woke me up to paying attention to those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Any other thing besides ladders that you think that some guys kind of mess up?
Well, I think, ladders is the big one. And it's the most frequent because they're on the deal. We see that, just depending on what type of work is being done, but, water fed accidents, while maybe not quite as prevalent as what we'd say ladders are, that when they happen, they are serious. And, we've seen death, we've seen, hips blown out, and you think water fed, you're thinking, what? Wait a minute, we're staying on the ground with water fed. This is a safer means. It may be, but one of the problems that we've, just seen is that a lot of guys aren't educated about the electrical hazards that are associated with water fed pole. Yeah. And that's a concern. And we want people in our industry to be more concerned about water fed and specifically electrical hazards around water fed, so that we don't have, we've had too many deaths, honestly, with water fed pole, and it's sad. It's really sad.
I think a lot of it is the false sense of security because of that, right? And I kind of compare it to how people are with Tylenol. There's overdoses every year of Tylenol, and it's because they think it's a harmless drug. Oh, it's Tylenol. You just pop it in your mouth. So they'll take, 3 didn't work. I'll take 4. Well, 4 is not working anymore. I'm going to take 6. And they take way more than what the dosage is on the bottle. And they have liver issues. They have problems with that. And it's because they have a false sense of security, thinking, oh, well, this isn't like a real drug. This is just something that I can take. It's over the counter. It's harmless. And it's not, and if you don't take it in the appropriate doses, you can cause serious harm or even death. And that's kind of what it was with water fed poles, is people are like, well, I'm not on the ladder. I'm not going up on a 30-foot ladder. So it's water fed pole. I'll just do it. It's going to be hard. It's going to be heavy. I really appreciated in your class, which when I took it for the first time, which I never really thought about, was always thinking about the radius of the pole. Then if that pole were to fall this way or to fall that way or to fall backwards, what is it going to hit or who might it hit?
Yeah.
And that was a huge lesson for me because you never think, oh, the pole's not going to fall. I've got it right here. And you just never know what could happen. You might set it down for a second, that you turn around to get something, you come back and it's fallen, or a gust of wind comes and it just kind of blows it back this way. And that's a safety issue. So
Yeah.
now we kind of keep that in mind when we kind of cone off the area, before we work.
Yeah, we call that the drop zone, right? And so the drop zone of a water-fed pole, if this was my pole, we kind of think about it all the time of it being able to go this way or this way down the building, but we don't often think about it going behind us.
Yeah.
And that's where we generally see, a guy pulls the pole off the building to move around, and he has a strike behind him, something that he didn't see. Maybe it was a high wire, or maybe the pole goes over. Mm-hmm. The other thing that we've seen that's been kind of a common denominator in a lot of these electrical strikes with water fed is the person being distracted. At least 3 of them that we've looked at over the last couple of years have been the guys walking back with the pole in his hand with the phone. And so, he's got it on his hip or he's got it wherever, and he's distracted already, right? And that's why I said accidents are generally, there's a lot of things going on. No one thing causes an accident. There's several factors going on all the time. Sure. And so put your phone down, keep, especially when there's electrical hazards around, keep your mind focused on what is going on. It's just, it's sad. Sad to see. I've been personally involved with a couple of training classes where there's been a death because of water fed, or a major injury where the guy can't even work anymore because he's been electrocuted. It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah. All right, Flowmies, pay attention when you use your water fed. Very good stuff. Good warnings. Okay, so our second question: what should window cleaners keep in mind when working on the roof? And this is something that, for me, this is something that I struggle with, because we have a lot of small houses out here, flat roofs. We get up on the roof, and we may clean some clear story or skylights or something. So what are some things that we should keep in mind?
Yeah, so the safety guy is never the popular guy, right? So and this is one where we're not. I get it. I didn't make the rules, though. I'm just explaining them what they are. So under the OSHA 1910 standard, basically, if an employee can fall a greater distance than 4 foot to another level, you have triggered the fall protection rules. It's really that simple. You say you get up on a flat area and clean a skylight. OSHA specifically mentions skylights, and skylights, wherever a skylight is, that is the hazard. All right. In the pressure washing industries, we had a couple of years ago, a guy was walking a flat roof. He was walking backwards. Okay, so we see there's one action. It's always multiple actions, but he's walking backwards on the roof, spraying sodium hypochlorite solution down, and he steps up on a skylight, goes down through it. Of course, he's not harnessed off, and he kills himself. Yeah. So that's why skylights are a danger, because you could potentially go through them. So, look, the issue is, if you're going to get up on a roof and you can fall greater than 4 feet, you're supposed to be in fall protection. That's the simple answer. I realize that, there's going to be every answer and excuse in the book from, your listeners. They're going to say, well, man, it only takes me like 1 second to get up there and get the window done that I'm getting ready to do. And it's, it takes me more time to set the fall protection system than it would be to get up there and just do the work. And so I'm going to do it. And I guess I understand there's business decisions that get made every day, but so far as the safety component of it, you're supposed to be in fall protection.
So what kind of fall protection equipment are available for like residential on that type of work?
Yeah, so it's hard, because most of the time it's not what everybody can kind of figure out the equipment. Most of the time what's hard is figuring out the anchoring, right? And so what am I attaching to? And so we have a kit that we sell that we've really kind of incorporated ground anchors, and they basically are a screw type anchor, and they go on end of a DeWalt gun. They're about 15 inches, and they drive into the ground. And we like to use 2 of them, and then we like to use what's called a Y chain off of them, so that we equalize those 2 anchors in the ground. and they're quick, they're easy. The only main hazard to it is we have to be careful about any underground lines, right? So might be a thing to have Julie come out, or whoever your locator person is, and have them locate stuff. But generally, if you can keep it right up next to the house, you can kind of be relatively safe that that's not going to happen. But anyway, it may be a wise choice. So the ground anchors are utilized, and now that gives you an anchor system to come up over the house. We like truck hitch anchors. You could use another set of ground anchors on the other side, but you can get it set up really, really quick. And so I'm a big proponent of that. It's going to depend on your ground, of course. If you're in the Rocky Mountains, you might not be able to drive a ground stake in very good. Here, I'm in Illinois. We have pretty good soil. It works fine. We actually load tested some of those ground anchors, and we put a load on one, a straight up pull out of the ground. Tried to pull it at 2,800 pounds, and it held just fine in wet ground that was been pretty wet. It had been raining a week. So we feel pretty confident. And then with the equalization as well on those anchors, if there's an anchor up on the roof, then use it. But most times there's not. So we got to figure something out.
Yep. That's usually the case. Okay, well, cool. I hadn't heard about the ground anchors. It's something to look into for sure. The hitch I've heard, and we've looked into getting it. I think that's something that we had been wanting to. But yeah, it's like what you say. It's like you make business decisions, and you just would hate for that business decision to turn into something that hurts somebody, especially hurts yourself or hurts one of your employees. Right. Just to make a few extra bucks or take a little more time. So awesome. Well, very cool. Number 3, what are some, we actually had talked about that. I was going to talk about the safety, about the water fed pole, but we'll get into, because you touched on, I think, enough of that. But let's talk into some common complaints that people have when it comes to safety. So number 1, I hear this a lot. I am a single owner operator. It doesn't really matter if I get OSHA 1910 certified because OSHA doesn't apply to me since I just work for myself. So what do you say to people who have that attitude?
True. No, OSHA doesn't apply to them. So OSHA really governs the employee-employer relationship. All right. So a sole operator, a person that is the owner and the one doing the work, OSHA doesn't really apply to you. So if you are viewing safety from the standpoint of a compliantary checkbox, you needn't worry about it. But here's what I would say, and I personally look at safety on a much higher level. And I'll say in my classes a lot of times, I don't really care about OSHA. I do. I mean, we're going to use them as the governing documents, right? And the rules that have been established to help govern ourselves. But at the end of the day, I don't care about OSHA. I care about lives. I care about people's lives. And if an owner operator gets on top of a 24-foot extension ladder, gravity doesn't care if he's an employee or the owner. It will work the same. And so, it really comes down, and an owner operator maybe has a greater responsibility. Not that any life is worth more than another, but he maybe has a greater, because here's the thing, he's the breadwinner probably. Right. He's the one bringing in the money. And so if that owner operator gets hurt, the impact to his family, to, his business, what happens if you're an owner operator and you're laid up for 6 weeks? We all know that we already talked about, we have a busy season. Well, 6 weeks of busy season goes by and you can't work, then that's obviously very devastating to a business. So on the surface, you're right. It doesn't apply to you. You don't need a certificate to work. You don't need that. But we try to have a much higher level of thinking than that. Safety isn't, for me anyway, and hopefully the companies that we work with, it's not just a compliantary checkbox. It's a way of thinking so that we never have to have that conversation. I talk with our bigger companies all the time. I'm never the popular guy, right? I show up on a job site. I'm going to critique rigging, or I'm going to critique how they're going about. We do a lot of high-rise companies. I'm going to be the critique on the job site. And sometimes the guys will get kind of, their feathers ruffled a little bit at first, but I always try to go back to the roof with them, and I try to tell them, I understand, you don't like to hear somebody correct or say anything about what's going on, but at the end of the day, I don't care about OSHA. I don't care about any of that. I don't want to have to make a phone call to your wife, to your girlfriend, to your mom, whoever it is, I don't want to have to make that phone call. Do not want to have to tell them that you're not coming home today because of this. Yeah. And so just know that I'm here. I'm here looking out after your life, not a complantory, fine or whatever. I could care less about that.
Yep, absolutely. I 100% agree. And when we had our crews certified, and we talk about different things that we do as a crew, and especially like with COVID too, some of the things that we had put in place were kind of a pain in the rear, to deal with in order to be in compliance. And one of my techs said, well, is OSHA really going to look at this? Is OSHA really going to care about this type of stuff? And I said, well, that's not the point. If they're making these stipulations, it's for your safety. And that's more what, will they ever find me? Probably not. But if you get sick, or if you get injured, or if something happens and it was because I didn't have these things in place, that's on me, and that's going to hurt my conscience. And I don't think I could live with myself if I knew that's what happened. So like you said, it's just, you have to think of it on a different level. If you're thinking simply compliance, there's a lot of things you wouldn't do. There's a lot of things that you could probably get away with and not worry about getting yourself in trouble fine wise. But at the same time, like you said, I mean, if it's not you, your employee is probably the breadwinner, of their family, and they have loved ones who want to see them, as they are, not in a wheelchair, or not, unable to work.
I get a kick out of some of the companies, larger companies that we deal with. When I first go in and consult with them, I'll say, "You got a safety manual?" "Oh yeah. And they'll go over to a shelf and they'll pull out this, this whatever this big, book is, and they, "Oh yeah, here's our safety manual." And I was like, okay, so it's just basically something that sits over there on the shelf, though, right? I mean, nobody. And if you start peeling through it, it's like nobody's doing anything in it. It's just
there's like gum in there.
Yeah, it was a compliantary checkbox that
1991 baseball card.
yeah. And so the employees don't even know it exists. And so it's just, so yeah, you can always look at safety. I've seen companies that have hit every single compliantary checkbox, and they're no more safe than anybody. Because all they've done is just, yep, I got this. Yep, I got this. Yep, I got this. But there was no implementation. Yeah. And so that's where we really need to focus. What's the implementation? Even an operator, is he doing things the way he should? And then, as you mentioned, though, when it comes to employees, now the employer has an obligation. He has to provide that training. That's very clear.
Yeah. And I think, that starts from the beginning, from when you hire. I've been very heartened because with ITFs we do a lot of mentoring, and we talk with new business owners. And I was talking with one friend of mine, and he's really trying to think of, he's going to hire his first employee, and he's really nervous about it. But one of the things he said was, I understand that when I become an employer, I become almost a steward of my employee, and I have to take their welfare in mind. And he's like, I'm afraid that I don't know enough to ensure that I'm keeping my employees safe and looking out for their well-being. And I said, you know what? Maybe you don't, but the fact that you care enough to even consider that, to me, instills in me that you're gonna be a great employer. And you're gonna do everything you need to make sure that your employees is going to be okay. You'll be willing to take the time to learn what it takes to do that because you care. Most people are like, hey, I got a lot of work, I need to make more money, who can I hire to do it? And that's their first thought, and sometimes their only thought. And to hear someone like him, who is like, his first thought is, I got to make sure that I'm going to be right by my employees. I say you're way ahead of most people who are even running businesses now, as far as whether you're going to care for them because you want to, and just that desire itself will motivate you to do what you need to do when it comes.
Yeah, when we ran our company, it's a similar thought. It's just, as an employer, I knew if I hired somebody, if I brought them on, and we had a lot different environment several years ago than we have today, but at any rate, I don't think it changes. When I brought you on, if I said, yes, we're going to we're going to bring you on the team. And this is a full-time position. The obligation then was mine, right? To have work. I've said, you can go home and tell your family that you have a job, a full-time job. That's what I've just told you. And so that weighed heavy with me. I mean, I felt like, okay, now our team has to do the job that we need to do to make sure that he has the work that I just promised that we've got. And it's really no different with safety. When you come to work here, we say we're a safe company. We're going to operate safe. And guess what? You can go tell your wife that you work for a safe company because you do, and we're going to enforce it. And so, yeah, there's some employer responsibility there, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of leads us to the next statement that I hear a lot. A real window cleaner gets it done no matter what it takes. So what do you say about that?
I think we touched on this earlier. I mean, our industry is full of type A egotists. And again, gravity doesn't care if you're type A or type B or type C, right? Gravity works every time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, look, we all get put in positions. I have myself where, we're forced to get it done, that get it done attitude. But really, and I think it comes a little bit with age too. When you get a little older, you're like, I maybe still can tuck, but I don't roll out as good as I used to. So
the roll-on's a little lumpy.
yeah, the recovery time is longer. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, there's always going to be that attitude. And you know what, I've experienced with a lot of different trades, and I see it in every single trade. It's not just window cleaning. You see it with roofers, you see it with carpenters, you see it, this is what we do. We just get it done, Yeah. It's not the guy I want to work beside. I'll tell you that, especially on a team, because it's a rogue thinking. And again, if we put him into a safety parameter, he's the next accident waiting to happen.
Yep. So I learned my lesson on this, and it was early on, thankfully. And there was a house, it was a construction cleanup, they had just done paint. And so the painter scaffolding was still on there. And so the customer was like, hey, you want us to use this? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I climbed up the painter scaffolding, got to some of the higher windows, but there was one circle window that was just a little too high to reach. And it was a scaffolding with these really thin boards. I mean, it was maybe 1.5 feet at the most, And so I went and got a step stool, and I put it on that wood plank on the very top, and I climbed up that, and I went and cleaned this little window. And, you get that little feeling in your stomach, like, oh man, I'm going to fall. And I cleaned it. I got back down, and then I looked down, and I was like, Gabe, you are such an idiot. You're charging like $10 for that little window. Is your life really worth $10? Is it really worth, a movie ticket and maybe a Coke, And it was like this revelation to me in that moment, that because I wasn't thinking about me. I was thinking, that's the last one I got to get to. I got to get done. And then I came down, and that feeling of, am I going to fall? Am I going to die? And you get down and you're just like, that is so not worth it. That is so not worth it. One, there's probably a better way to clean it than doing what I just did. But two, even if I couldn't do it, if that was the only way to do it, that's the time to tell the customer, hey, I got everything except for that window. Sorry, it is not safe for me to do that, And if a customer is going to be that upset and say, forget it, I'm not paying you at all for this job. Okay, well, I think my life is probably worth more than $400, and sometimes you're going to have to eat it if it's for your safety. But that really helped me kind of formulate from then on how I would bid jobs, and I learned that I could tell customers, no, I'm not going to do that one window. I don't feel safe doing it.
Yeah, and it's we talk about a lot with we compare it to life, and sometimes it could be life threatening, but maybe it's not even quite that drastic. But again, what's the impact if I fall? If I can't work tomorrow. Your employer, which is going to be your customers, they'll find somebody else in a minute, Yep. So you're just really putting yourself out there, and that's what it's not worth. We want you to go to work tomorrow. We want you to continue to make the good money that you make as a window cleaner in your busy season because you've taken some precautions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also it calls on you to kind of be observant of your surroundings and what you're really going up against, because I think sometimes the mistake, and I know I made early on, I'm more experienced now, so I can kind of see the things, but you say you can do a certain job when you really don't know, or you don't know what things to look for, and then you find yourself in the position of, oh man, this was, this is a lot worse. Like one, for instance, I took in a job for this company that did construction cleanup, and I went and eyeballed the job, and I said I could do it. These windows were half circles. They were 30 foot. The ledge was 30 foot high. I had a 32-foot ladder. So as you can imagine, that angle going up there to get to that, and it was not safe. I climbed up on the ledge to get to this half circle. And, had I taken the time to get the ladder down and try it out, I probably wouldn't have taken the job, but I just eyeballed it. And, oh yeah, I can do that. No sweat, and it was, of course I saw the dollar signs on the job. And it was just, it's one of those things where you look back and I'm like, man, there's so many better ways to do stuff. But if you got that attitude, like, well, I'm a man, I'm going to do this because it's got to get done. And, if I got to cut, or take some chances or whatever, that's the way it is.
I would just end that this question by this: every single accident, death, maiming, whatever it might have been, was somebody getting it done.
Mm-hmm.
What were they doing? Not getting it done? No, they were getting it done, right? And so again, we just had a death in our industry off of an aerial lift here recently. What were they doing? And they were getting it done. So yeah, it's not a great phrase in my mind.
No, not at all. And like, I think a lot of it too is we kind of come to terms with our own mortality. We've talked about it in a few other podcasts as well, that when you understand that you're not invincible, and that you like life, you like breathing, you like walking, you begin to kind of be a little more thoughtful on things like that, and being smarter, and ITF, that's part of our goal, to promote that safety. Very cool. We touched on this a little bit more. I just wanted to see if there's maybe anything else that you wanted to add to it. But some people, and like you mentioned, they say OSHA requirements are way too restrictive to follow on every job. So anything else to add on that?
Yeah, I think that statement probably just shows a lack of understanding of OSHA requirements. There's a book of, OSHA requirements, if you will, but really, rather than try to look at it from a rule base, so what is the rule here? It's really principles, right? It's not, because if you read through the OSHA guidelines, they give you a guideline to follow, but it's not really a hard rule, right? And they don't really suggest how either. Mm-hmm. So you have to think of it in terms of principle. And so when you approach a job, really, rather than think, what's the OSHA rule on this? No, just think about what is the hazard, right? Assess the hazards of the job. Okay, if I've got multiple ladder sets, okay, what do we need to talk about with ladders? Because we've got ladder sets here. If we've got a water-fed pole, is there any overhead electrical lines? No, there's not. Okay, that hazard can go away. If there is, now we talk about that hazard. Mm-hmm. So rather than thinking about, it in the standpoint of, this rule and this rule and this rule, which is how, if a person doesn't quite understand, the concepts of safety, that's what happens. I mean, you think about it. Think about these multifaceted construction projects. Mm-hmm. You've got everything going on from aerial lifts to cranes and there's quite a measure of safety that's happening on that job site. Why? How can that be? I mean, OSHA is so restrictive, right? So a lot of people think that OSHA just don't want you to do anything. And an analogy I always use is that's not the case, because otherwise a carpenter wouldn't be allowed to use a circular saw.
Right.
Because there's an inherent risk every time you use one, right? You could cut your hand off.
Exactly.
That's not what OSHA says. OSHA just says, hey, there's an inherent danger there. And so make sure you use the precautions, keep the guards on the thing, keep your hands out of it, maybe use cut gloves, whatever. But it's not that they're saying that there's not inherent danger there. There is. And that's the same thing with us. It doesn't have to be so rigid that, we can't work, we can't follow. We're allowed to work.
Yeah. Awesome. No, I like that thinking, that way of thinking. I think a lot of it is, like you mentioned earlier, window cleaning attracts a certain type of personality, and very independent minded. And of course, OSHA represents authority. OSHA represents doing something. So what I try to tell myself, yes, what I always try to tell myself is, if there's a rule that or a guideline that's given that I kind of question, the easy thing is to say, oh, well, that's ridiculous. Why would they put that in there? That doesn't make any sense. I always try to say, okay, there's probably a reason why they put that in there. And I try to kind of visualize, well, what could have been the reason why what has happened, what accidents have happened, what dangers are there. Because just like when they tell you to shampoo, and it has the instructions on there, lather, rinse, lather, repeat. There's a reason why those instructions are on there. There's somebody who needed to figure out how to do that, what to do with this stuff in their hand. I really, that's what I always try to do, is just remember, well, look, if they didn't just write this bunch of rule book just because they were doing busy work.
There's very few line items in the OSHA general industry standard, is what we're talking about here, that either aren't science backed. You talk about a fall hazard or swing fall or something like that, that's not backed by some sort of science, or that there hasn't been something happen. Mm-hmm. That's why the rule exists, is because some accident has happened by that particular line item.
Yeah, exactly. And I learned a lot too with IWCA, when they were going back and forth with OSHA trying to come up with the 1910 type setup. And I appreciated that they were able to kind of work it out where they came to an agreement on that. So what that says is that there's thought put into all of those rules, right? Mm-hmm. And there's thought put into why these things are, and it's not just a kind of happenstance. Well, this sounds good, or this will make us look good, or whatever. A lot of, we're talking years of thought has gone into some of these rules, and maybe they're restrictive for our specific situation, or may appear restrictive for our specific situation, but there have been situations where this has probably saved lives. And that's why it's in there, and that's why I try to remind myself whenever I get frustrated with something that we're trying to implement in our company. So very cool. Okay, very good. So let me ask you this question. As an employer, what is the mindset that we want to try to instill with our employees when it comes to safety? And I say that because as an employer, I get people from all kinds of backgrounds. Some are just very wet behind the ears, so to speak. So they're just kind of new, and they're just excited, and they just kind of want to go forth and do stuff. Then you get the vets, like you said, who can't tell them anything because they've done this for 50 years. And if you try to implement safety guidelines, then they kind of, they bristle at it a little bit. So what is the mindset that we need to try to help our employees to see, so that they may be more accepting of your implementation of these standards in your business?
Yeah, and I think it actually goes both ways. So OSHA has a term, and it's 3 words: plan, provide, train. And those words, whether we're talking to employees, they just need to understand that, hey, my obligation to you is to plan, provide, and train. And that's even what an employer, if I had to summarize what's in a safety program, what's in a safety plan, it's plan, provide, train. So we plan the work. We've looked at the work. We understand it. We understand what the hazards that are associated with that work. We provide the necessary equipment that is needed to mitigate those hazards and help them to be safe. And then we train. We train on the hazards. We train on the equipment that we're being issued. And that's really it. We don't have to, take it really any further than that to an employee. Here's the plan. This is what we want. And I've been involved in a lot of just OSHA investigations after a fine, and I've never been in one yet where OSHA doesn't ask, what's the plan? What was the plan that day? What was the intent? What was what were they thinking that they were going to do? Was that instructed by the employer? And so the plan is important. And does employees just need to understand that, hey, here's what this is our safety program, plan, provide, train. And so it doesn't have to be rigid. It doesn't have to be, oh, you've got to take the OSHA. Whenever you get into all that, it just doesn't come across well. So again, we're thinking in principles. What are the hazards? We just want you to identify the hazards. Look, we hope we've provided everything for you to mitigate those hazards out there. And then you've had some training on the hazards and the equipment. That's it.
I love that. I'm going to adopt that phrase.
Yeah.
Plan, provide, train. I just got to say, I feel like a parent sometimes when it comes to this, because it's almost like I'm telling them, well, do it because I'm telling you to do it. And I hate that, because I don't parent that way, and I've worked hard to not parent that way. And yet I feel like that's what I'm doing to my employees. I'm like, okay, we got to do this. Why do we look, just do it because I'm telling you we got to do it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be that way. I don't want to be that way at all. And so I love that. So, hey, look, here's the plan. This is what I'm giving you, the tools to be able to follow the plan. And this is how you can do it. I love that, because now it's kind of a system. You're introducing a system mindset to your employees, as opposed to just do this because I said to do it,
Right.
So that's good, because when you say it that way, and that's how a lot of techs feel, is they're okay, I'll do it because I have to, not because I think it's the right thing to do. Right. Now you're kind of saying, well, no, this is a system. You're working within a system that has been established and has a validity. And as long as you work within that system, it's going to be safe for you, and it's going to be safe for the company as well, and for the customers. So, all right, cool. I wrote that down here. I'm going to use that now. I'm going to start using that when I talk to them. All right, awesome. Well, anything else to add, Mike? I really appreciate the time you gave us.
No, I think, I love your group, and anything that we can do to help you guys out, let us know. And I appreciate you having me on again.
Yeah, awesome. And so tell them how they can get to Expert Safety Services.
Yeah, expertsafetyservices.com. Pretty simple, and just whether it be the advocate program or any of the other features that we have in there. Please check us out.
Something too that's a hidden, I don't say a hidden secret, but I don't think a lot of people know, when you become a member, you have access to a lot of equipment on your site that's at really great prices, and stuff that, like, one of the ones that I'm really excited, I still have not purchased, I really got to get one, is the pole that has been that's made for the water fed pole that's resistant to shock.
Yeah.
I think that is something that really should be more well known. It's a Tucker pole. What's the name of it?
Yes, Tucker Eco. And so
Eco.
I think I have one here, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's got this yellow base, and these yellow bases, they've been third-party tested. They actually had 100,000 volts run down to them, and these bases have actually stopped the shock. And so, we try to, if you're in an area that has potential electrical hazards, then it's a good idea to have one of those.
But there's a bunch of safety equipment on there, anything that you can think of. And so check them out, expertsafetyservices.com. And Mike is also always good. If you just have questions, you can hit him up, and then he can direct you in the right way to go. So we appreciate your time. We also always appreciate your contributions to ITF. Thank you, Mike. We appreciate it. Please say hi to the family for me.
I will. Thank you very much for having me on. Talk to you soon.
I'll talk to you soon. And thank you, Flowmies, for listening. Hope you guys have a great week. You guys take care and flow on.